read a little bit. Elizabeth Edwards is an internationally celebrated communication strategist, research explorer, and leader of communication science movement. Founder of Volume PR and Engagement Science Lab, Edwards helps leaders, enterprises, universities, NGOs, and government agencies dramatically improve high-stakes and complex communication outcomes based on the most advanced understanding of the mind we've had in human history. I know for me, this morning she really inspired me, and it was just really positive. I felt good leaving, so looking forward to this session.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm so glad y'all are here. Yay. Woohoo! Who's ready to learn some more science? Yes. Good. I love it. All right, so we are going to go into the 7 sequences of sense making. We're calling it this because we're looking at the whole universe of communication dynamics and how do we simplify them down into 7 steps you can take. So I want you to know that today's presentation, there's a link at the end for you to be able to download a copy. So take your notes, all those types of things, but you will get the actual presentation if you want that. One of my friends who's seen me in other places reminded me too that I have an ebook, if you would like, at engagementsciencelab.com. There's a download of an ebook on the 9 cognitive messaging mistakes, is what we call that. But just a couple other pieces of content, if that's helpful for all of you. Engagement Science Lab, no S at the end, engagementsciencelab.com. And there should be a pop-up that comes in there somewhere for you to download 9 cognitive messaging mistakes. So there's other kind of 9 things to look at and make sure are not present in your comms. And then today we're going to learn 7 very distinct processes and things that we can start doing and incorporating into the creation of your messages to tune. All right. Now to get started, I want us to all think for a second about how we would solve and approach different types of communication initiatives, okay? We talked this morning about how communication is change. We're always trying to change people. It's what's happening when we communicate. So we're going to be really intentional, really responsible and respectful about I'm not just talking to you, I'm changing you, okay? So let's say that we are hired to clean up a beach, okay? We're here to create communication, campaign, whatever it may be, to do something against this problem and help to change behavior here. So I just want to ask, and this is a safe space. Like we said, we're communication, community, allies. Nobody's judging anything here. We want to really, though, think about and kind of bring to our forefront where the base of our strategies are coming from so we can kind of tune and shift some of that. So it's really helpful if we get involved and we talk about things. I want you to, during this workshop, raise your hand and ask questions if you have them while we're going along, because I want to help make sure that we kind of keep that momentum building. And then, of course, afterwards, I'm going to be here for the rest of the day. So feel free to come chat with me if you have any questions too. But let's now start with imagining we've all been hired to help fix this problem, okay? There's too much pollution at the beach. Now, what are you going to likely do? Give me some ideas of what we can do to mitigate against this problem.
First thing I'd do is contact the local high schools and see if they have any juniors and seniors that need community service time.
Great idea. Let's start mobilizing people real directly and specifically to get that problem handled, because this is like state of crisis. That's brilliant.
I want to know how much of it is litter coming in from the ocean.
Research.
Yeah, where is it? What's the source?
Coming in from the source.
Love that. Researcher over here. I want all the information. Love that. Yes.
I went storytelling route. I think that you probably had some really good times on this beach with your family and creating, kind of bringing back some of those memories, creating some ownership of what was into what is.
I got goosebumps.
And make you want to come back. Like, get your piece of the beach.
That feels nice. I love that. Yeah, bring up the emotion of the positivity so we care. We want to be involved.
And there are a few people in this room who will remember the campaign back from the 70s with the crying Indian, showing the impact that it was having on the earth. It was extremely.
Yeah, tie people into the core of this isn't just a dirty beach. This is a really big, our Mother Nature is crying to us.
Yeah.
Wow, That's powerful. You guys must have been in the Science of Communication keynote, learned some things this morning. That's not usually what people say right up front. They're telling me about the signs that they're going to make and the different ways that we'll maybe put out a sign with trash bags in it, or the gloves that we can put on to pick things up or things like that. So we talked this morning about how when we communicate from a resonant science of communication perspective, we see our audience as our ally, as an extension of us. We are all part of that same community. And I think a lot of times in communication, what we've inherited as the norm process is more of an energy of paternalism. It's more of a, oh, you just don't know that you're a dirty animal. Let me tell you, you're a slob. So let me put up a sign about how you need to clean up after yourself. Or let me, give you some trash bags, you filthy animal, because you're not doing this right. There's that kind of paternalism of let me tell you, you just don't know. Now, who in their right mind, though, anyone in the world is going to see this? They know this is a problem. We don't need to state the obvious, right? Necessarily. So what do we do to really get people to change their behavior so they go here? And I want to show you some examples of what we would call a resonant communication outcome. So in like Indonesian countries, they have a fish that's called the goby, and it eats garbage. It's like a kind of like carp in here, I think, where it eats whatever's the junk at the bottom of the ocean and such. And so to mitigate this problem, thinking from that perspective of, what do I want to do when I go to the beach? What's going to make me do that? The crying Indian, it'll make me feel sad. It'll make me feel like this is painful, and so I want to fix it from that energy, right? Or then we've got community activation kind of energy of we're going to come together and we're going to do this. But thinking from that ally fun perspective, you get a wire mesh art installation called Gobi. He has a little sign on him right about here. It says, "Hi, my name's Gobi. I'm hungry. I eat plastic. Please feed me."
That's cute.
Now this, you can't really tell, there's like a mesh over it. So what happens is people go to the beach, they've changed their behavior so much, more people go to this dirty beach now. They take their evening family walks and whatnot to go there. As you pick up trash all over the beach, you then go feed goby. You're not picking up trash, you're feeding goby. And that's what goby fish actually eat in that part of the world. So it really ties in. The garbage eating animal is the garbage receptacle that I'm feeding. And now what happens to our behavior when we're at the beach and we see this? There's people that even bring their trash. I think the number was that they had to empty it 3 times more frequently than they projected because so many people participate and want to feed goby. Because it's no longer pick up after yourself, you messy charlatan. It's have fun. Have fun. We're allies. What do we want to do? How do we solve problems from a place of fun and community? And if we let ourselves take time in that space with no pressure and rush to just quick get to that campaign, but let ourselves sit and think in that space, we will come up with such amazing options. How about this one? Blood drives, okay? You're in charge of getting more people in your state. Say this is a statewide initiative. You work for the governor's office. You work for the health department. What are you going to do to increase blood donations in your state? Well, we normally see things like this, right? Does this look like what you're used to seeing? It's good to give things numbers, make it simple, a sticker. Okay, honest, who's gonna go give blood though because you get a sticker? T-shirt, okay. Clothing, you can reuse that. Yeah, we can reuse that. We can keep showing who we are. But I have a 11 and 8-year-old little boys. They do things for stickers, but I don't do things for stickers. Like, I love stickers, but that's not really what's jacking up my energy to do something that is going to cause me pain, physical pain, right? How about this?
Oh, that's cool.
Now, I want you to think about if you're getting a sticker, who's going to go donate blood today, versus if this is going on in your community, who wants to donate blood? I'm on camera, and I will admit I don't donate blood like I probably should. if this was going on, it would change my behavior. I want two-way communication. I want to be an ally with who I'm giving blood to. Then they talk to me. I gave of myself. How hard is it to set up a text system like this? It takes some doing, yeah. But there are now places in the United States already doing things like this. And this is where things get really exciting for us as communication professionals, when we realize this is our scope of work. We're allowed to propose things at this magnitude. We're allowed to say the way we solve the communication problem isn't with just this written content, but how we campaignistically, strategically approach the whole of what we're doing to create a different relationship with the people that we're engaging and create a whole different dynamic around what we want to do. I really love this quote. It's from the head of neuroscience at USC's Brain and Creativity Institute. So imagine you're a neuroscientist, you do nothing but study the brain, and then you're famous for a quote that says, "We are not thinking machines that feel. We are feeling machines that think." The brain is not first. We know this because, as we all talked about this morning, it's more of what are the vibrations of the words doing to me physically, psychologically, and then the neurological impact. So how do we help people in their experiences of feeling? And I'm here to say the majority of language and what we've all been tuned and trained on is how we orient around pain and fear and urgency and scarcity and some of these things that really drop us down into a lower frequency, because there's a lot of times we do act from those. But what's really exciting about this research is that we now understand how to coordinate people to take action from that more place of coordination and positivity. That's what we're going to look at today. So just to orient yourselves first around a few background pieces that I think are really helpful to know is when we're talking to the mind, there's actually 3 sections of the mind that you want to think about. We've got our conscious mind. That's where we're thinking. That's what I'm speaking from typically. It's called system 2 brain. It's slower, intentional. And we make a whopping 5% of our decisions from that brain. Only 5. 95% of our decisions are made in what's called the non-conscious mind, or the system 1 mind. It's very, very fast, very quick processing. That's the one that is rooted in feeling and emotional, psychological experience. And then we have this part of our brain that we go into sometimes called the regret mind or the predictive mind. That's where we try to forecast. Do I want to do this? Do I not want to do this? What might my experience be, right? So I want you to always know when you're talking to people, a lot of times we think this is where I'm speaking. I'm talking to their conscious minds. And you're not. You're not really. They don't really hear this very much, which is why we want to use so many different strategies that we know help this mind get on board with what we are engaging the conscious mind in. And then be respectful of knowing that we're always trying to forecast and figure out, is this good for me? Is this bad for me? And how do we serve up answers to that predictive question that our audience is more likely to have? I showed you this morning that in the behavioral and cognitive sciences world, this is just the last 4 years of insights, or some of the books in the last 4 years. But there has been an explosion of insights from these fields, and they teach us a whole new operating system for how we engage one another. What you're seeing here is called the Cognitive Bias Codex. This is the 2016 version. The reason I have one that's that old is because the new versions are so big, they can't fit them all into one diagram anymore. It's just a list online. But what this was an attempt to say, okay, all the things the behavioral and cognitive sciences have mapped about how the mind makes sense, how the mind processes things, or what we know, all the different phenomena, can we put it into one model so we understand what's happening? So if you zoom in on this, and just so you know, you can download a copy of this if you would like. It's on wikimedia.com. Oops, there we go. It's on Wikimedia, not Wikipedia, but Wikimedia, and Google Cognitive Bias Codex, and you can get in there, and every single one of these is a hyperlink too, so you can click in and interact with them to learn. But it's organized in different categories based on, if I jump back here, when something doesn't have enough meaning, or we need to act fast, what are we supposed to remember? Or I want to then zoom in and show you this is okay, there's too much information. Remember we talked about we're all juggling so many things in these states of cognitive load. So it helps us as communicators to look at what are the things that the sciences know we're going to lean on in that unconscious processing in order when we are in states of cognitive overload. When we're overwhelmed, what do we resort back to more and more and more? Any parents in the room? This is really helpful with our kids, okay? Really helpful. All right, but anyway, see how up here it says bizarre, funny, visually striking, anthropomorphic things stick out more than non-bizarre, unfunny things, okay? So I want to show you an ad I keep seeing on TV this week. So maybe some of you have seen it too. Oscar Myers has this new morning scrambler. Scramblers, have you seen this? Yeah. Do you see what's happening there? They mix up the letters, right? We've all seen the things on social, like, hey, you can actually read all this type of stuff. Well, it's a product about scramble. They scramble the actual letters. We're more likely to remember this. When you hear the word scramble, because it was so unusual, and especially if you watch the video of it as it keeps talking to you and showing you these things, it will stick out in your memory and is more likely of an ad, of all the ads that we have come through us, or all that communication coming into our juggling field, that we're going to remember it and it'll stick out more. So I want to give you a taste of what we're talking about, one of these different examples. And what we're going to do is get into more of those specific elements of exactly what we use that's the most effective for influencing behavior positively on a scaled level. So this is again showing us in the overall science of communication what are all of the different fields that are present. As we know, the majority of where we draw our insights now is from the social sciences and all the things that they have to teach us. But there's tremendous insights from the entire universe of sciences. And so what resonant communication is a process of coordinating all of the science insights to bring them into 3 forms of dynamics, which take the place of 7 sequences, we'll show you here, but 3 different dynamics that you're now working with when you create a message. The first is resonant dynamics. There's 5 layers in there. What do I do to increase my audience's state of consideration? So they're more likely to consider. They're more likely to say, I received like the first packet and I will continue looking at it. I will participate in this with you. Remember that first change is I wasn't even aware, and then we create an initial state of awareness. They've knocked on the door. How do we get them to keep considering what they've just opened the door to see? So they'll stay in communication with me. Then, how do I create more connection, more relationship? Establish them as my ally, as opposed to just somebody I'm talking to. And they're getting the information, but there's not a cord of relationship between us. Comprehension. How do I help them understand? How do we simply understand things more instead of being in a state of confusion? There's techniques we know we can execute that make people more confused, techniques that diminish confusion. So how do we dial up that comprehension outcome in our audiences? And then motivation and memory. What are the ways that you can tune into your message so that it has a greater effect at making people motivated to want to do it? Like we saw with the beach. Who would feel motivated to participate in that? I know that usually every room I ask when I say, are you more motivated to clean up the beach when there's Goby there than when it's just a sign saying the beach is really dirty, please clean up after yourself? You know, it has a completely different relationship with even, you know, your whole family, the whole community. People change their behavior to go there and participate as a group because everybody's motivated. Maybe just your kids motivated and they make you aware of it to motivate you. You know, there's so many different ways that we engage that. And then lastly, memory, like the scramble ad. What are the different techniques that we have to make sure that we've tuned this message so that you're most likely to remember it after we're done with this? So we're gonna go through today and give you some examples of some of the specific things that you can do in order to tune in those dynamics of resonance. Then the next layer is what we call harmonic dynamics. How do I become more harmonic with my audience? What are the things that are in my language that are creating harm rather than harmony. And we're going to go through an example of that today. And then lastly, we look at what we call distortion dynamics. There are 6 different forms of backfire I'll show you today, and we'll dig into one of them a little more deeply. But that's what we talked about this morning, where there's certain things that make some people feel really at ease, and then we get that, oh man, I put out this message expecting this outcome and I totally got this different, everybody's mad, or man, I didn't expect that it would backfire on me this way. Well, we know what triggers many forms of backfire, so now we can mitigate against that. So what you're going to be doing as a resonant communication professional is we're ideating around the way that we first create that message from some of the things I talked about this morning. Noise analysis instead of SWOT. And then we've got our meta message. We have this formula where we create a meta message based on values and allyship and some of these things. And then we take that meta message and we tune it through resonant dynamics. We tune it through the harmonic dynamics we know, and we make sure that there are no forms of distortion triggers within it. And then we have our strategy. Then we've got our macro message of what we're going to be communicating. So let's start with what we call sequences 1 through 5. This is the resonant section. So I call this 7 sequences because we've got 5 resonant dynamics that are where we spend the majority of our time. And then number 6 is harmonics and 7 is distortion, okay? So we're gonna spend the majority of our time here with looking at some of these different resonant dynamics. So they're kind of organized here in the 5 different layers of all the things that we can influence. Again, we're influencing consideration, comprehension, connection, motivation, and memory. Because these are the 5 elements, if you will, within that operating system of our whole communication engine that we can work with the most effectively. It's a lot, though, when we look at it in this way. This is why the majority of sciences stay over there in all their zillions of things that they know, rather than over here where we can put it into work. So we're looking at how do we really coordinate all this insight, knowing how our lives are as communication people and what we actually do to make it applicable for us. So let's dive in a little deeper on motivation dynamics. So here's a picture just showing you some of the tuned in things that are present under motivation. And if you're taking classes with us, if you're learning resonant communication, we're going to teach you what all of these things mean. Because it's not about becoming a master of every single element, but these are all the dynamics that are at work when we want to motivate someone or when we want someone to not have a backfire of not feeling motivated. And so everywhere in here is one of those places, one of those levers that we want to tune, as tuning that message in as successfully as we can. The first layer, you'll see we have choice architecture and nudge. I want to show you what choice architecture is here this morning. And then we'll go into nudge as 2 of the motivation dynamics that you're going to learn. Okay, has anybody heard the phrase choice architecture before? We'll add it to your business card, friends, because you are all choice architects. When you create communication, you are architecting choice for your audience. This book was published like 15, 20 years ago, by the way. We've been known to be architecting choice for a long time. And there's certain ways we know that if we present the information, people make completely different choices just based on how that information is presented. So depending on how we organize those choices, we can create what are called states of nudge. Has anybody heard of the word nudge before? So nudge is where there's a certain behavior we want people to take, and we want to get them a little closer to taking that behavior without economic incentive. So I'm not creating a coupon. I'm not discounting. I'm not doing anything in that kind of realm, which is really helpful for us as communication professionals who often don't have that type of leverage either to influence some of those things that maybe marketing or sales or org dev may have more opportunity to influence. So if I can't change some of those elements, how do I still change behavior in a predictable way? I know it's likely to have the outcome that I'm working towards. So let's take a look at this. Here's nudge in design, okay? Some examples. I like to show it how it really is. So this is trying to get people to recycle by creating a little maze on the ground, right? It's fun. I'm more likely to first of all, look at it of what is it even doing or get there. Or I'm telling people to stop using so much toilet paper and I design the roll in the middle to be square. So there's friction as you pull. It slows you down a little bit. It's creating awareness at a haptic biofeedback level of slow down. We can talk to people in so many different ways. It doesn't only have to be words. Nudge and design here, what's that one saying at the end? Stand on the right, walk on the left. Right? Who's seen that so many times? But if your unconscious mind, right, we're just walking through life, not reading all the things around us. But we get there and we see that and we know loud and clear what it's saying. I find this to be such respectful communication. When we know our community is overwhelmed with words, tired with all the paternalism. So how do we communicate in ways that we're even more successful as communication professionals, and the audience loved it? They're more involved and having a good time. This is one of the things that made Nudge really successful was this study that was done in the Amsterdam bathroom. And I love putting urinals on the wall, let me tell you, in presentations. This is always unexpected. But can you guys see what's there in the middle? It's the most celebrated Nudge example from what really made this famous is they put this hyper-realistic sticker of a fly in the urinals because they had a problem, I love this in the research, they had a problem with spillage and they wanted to change behavior around spillage. So what do? We could put up signs, you're gross, I have 2 little boys and I think all the time of that little sign of like, be a sweetie, wipe the seedy, like if you sprinkle when you tinkle, like something like that, like rhyme kind of thing, right? Or we don't even vibe into the world of words and we give them a sticker to aim at of a fly. I think that this changed there it is, 80% decrease. Who's ever measured an 80% behavior change from a campaign? Right, it's a 10% or 5% or kind of in those, and that's a powerful change. What happens when you can change behavior 80%? That's what happens when we get down into this, not how I'm chattering to the conscious mind, 5%, but I am resonating with the 100% of you. So there's 2 kinds of nudge in the world, what we call blind nudge and conscious nudge. Blind, bad. Conscious, good. Now here, there was a grocery store and they just put green arrows all over the ground. No idea what the green arrows mean. There's just big green arrows all over the ground. And 9 out of 10 people followed the arrows to see where they go. They were trying to increase traffic to the produce department in a produce department that was at the back of the store. And when they put these green arrows with no words, no explanation on them, 9 out of 10 people went to the produce department.
In the produce.
Bathrooms like behind. You got that was my unconscious bringing up how annoyed I am about how bathrooms are always in the furthest away possible place. So you have to walk through absolutely everything to do what you need to do. Anyway, I digress. But here, you don't know where you're going when you're following those. So let me put this another way. Let's say that you're a mom and you have kids who walk home from school, okay? And they walk through town. And then all of a sudden one day they're walking along and there's all these arrows on the ground with no instruction about what they are. Do you want your kids to follow them? No, don't you follow them either. It could be to a bad guy's house, okay? Don't do that, right? And if you try to take yourself through that scenario of, do I want my kid to do this? Would I want to encounter this and would that feel safe? If it's not, then don't do it. That blind nudge, it'll be effective. It'll be super effective, but it's not ethical. It's not in a place of allyship. It's in a place of trickery. And there's a difference between simplifying for comprehension and connection and relationship and tricking. And we're not here to be tricking. A conscious nudge, here's another example I think is really powerful, is at a hospital, they wanted to help people be more aware about what they're eating and make healthy food choices. So imagine you're walking through a cafeteria line, a typical cafeteria line. It may have all the ingredients, it may have the caloric and fat and all that different stuff, but remember all the things you're juggling. Now you're walking and your taste buds are fighting with you, you know, and all their opinions, and you're grabbing food and going, right? Because you can't process everything on this little label every time. So what they did is they changed to use a red, yellow, and green system. So when you go to the soda section, the sodas had a big red sticker on them. And do you guys see these numbers here? When they changed to add red, yellow, green, colors. That's not in the world of graphic design, by the way, anymore. This is all us, okay? This is all where we communicate. Red beverages, they decreased the amount of soda they were drinking in the hospital almost 40% in 2 years. 40%. How many times has there been talk about this is the ingredient that's hurting you, or this is the negative, blah, 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 blah. It's all to that conscious brain. Make it easier for me. Help me understand, help me comprehend quickly. Not comprehend by being in my conscious, loaded, figuring it out mind, but help me figure it out fast at this intrinsic level and what a difference in behavior I have because of that. It's another example from the energy company, although I'm a little bitter about these because I think they falsify them now. But when they first changed, does anybody get one of these where you get a little thing in the mail and it says, here's how your energy usage compares to those in your community? It was 8 times more cost effective than offering things like rebates and getting people to reduce their amount of energy usage. I have ours taped on the wall for my children to see that shows that we are like way bad compared to everybody else, with little praying hands of like, please turn off lights. Like I'm, my way of nudging my children. This one's fascinating to me too, is that H&R Block worked with FAFSA to autofill college application forms with available tax data. Just making that load easier. 8.1 percentage points more likely to attend college, just from autofilling some details in a form. So many ways that we can think about the load. Think about a juggler with a few balls and some of them fire. And that anything that we give to them that adds another level is more likely to make them just abandon process. And we take away as many things we can that contribute to that load, and we have more kids going to college. We have more people being educated. We affect significant change. So that was a little look at some of the things regarding choice architecture and nudge. And there are 3 questions. Clearly, I did not work on my animations. So we're going to bring them all up here. All right, 5 questions, actually, around choice architecture and nudge. So as you're creating your strategy, these are the elements you want to ask yourself. What choices is my audience, my community making? What choices do I want them to make? How are the choices architected now, and how many choices are there? So we were working with Transamerica to help them with dialing in the process of getting more people participating in retirement planning. And they'd launched a new website that was supposed to be behaviorally messaged and optimized, and sales plummeted when they launched this new behavioral insight. So we came in to audit it and say, what's wrong? And it was a choice architecture audit. We came in to look at the website and look at the materials and the way it's all presented. How many choices are there? How are those choices architected now? And do we experience that there's difficulty or cognitive load in the very first question? If I have to stop and think to answers that they're deep questions right up front, we don't want to be putting brakes on right away, right? That will slow how people participate. What choices can be simplified or just eliminated entirely? What choices can be made more fun or creative, enjoyable, like at the beach? And in all of my years of doing comms with companies, comms with other folks, it's never been a place that we ideate from as like a root strategy of how do we make this more fun for people? It's always SWAT. It's always more in this really serious realm, which is, this is serious. But to think of it seriously is how I become an ally and how I have fun and how I enjoy my life and my community enjoys theirs. And then what is a way to convey that choice with less or absolutely no words? I challenge you, encourage you, brainstorm this way. Think about how you solve your problems this way. You will be amazed at what you come up with. It will come out of you. You will come up with ideas like Gobi. You will come up with ideas like text when your blood is used. You will come up with the most amazing outcomes and campaign ideas that transform your results and your company because you're thinking from a different vibrational space. Let's look now at some connection dynamics. So in the world of connection, so many different ways. And you'll see, here's one that we know, story, right? We all know how storytelling unites us. And there's another awesome workshop here today around storytelling. Storytelling has such phenomenal elements in how it creates more states of connection. It's that I understand because I'm in your story with you. I'm in a place of experiencing that together. And some other elements, though, that we know from connection, I want to give you a taste of that are really powerful, is called unity effect. How do we use this concept of and influence states of unity, create more relationship? Unity effect says that we all want to be a part of us, an us. How do we create this favorable shared identity? And if we do that, we have deeper states of connection and relationship if we have shared identity with folks. Warren Buffett is celebrated, one of his pieces of financial communication is celebrated as one of the most successful pieces of financial comms because he used unity effect. When he was asked, what happens when you die? Okay, you're in crisis or financial comms. Can you imagine answering the question, what happens when you die, and not tanking stock price, not tanking all these types of things? And the letter that he wrote, it started with, I will tell you what I would say to my family today if they asked me about Berkshire's future. He created unity by saying, oh, we're all part of the same family. That's a natural question for my family to ask. So I'll answer it from the place of if I was speaking to my family. Do you guys see what that did all of a sudden? Of taking it away from that predictive regret mind that's trying to imagine what happens when the king of this empire is no longer here, to, yeah, we don't need to worry about that. We're not here today. And he's speaking to me as if he was speaking to a member of the family. So I feel much more calm there. Specific words that we can use to create shared factors, things that we all share, and using language like how I would talk to my children or to my family or to these types of things are the words you want to think about using. You're focusing on creating similarity because we trust those who are like us. And complement. We're drawn to people who are positive to us. We're drawn to people who are more our ally. Think about, back when we lived in the days of less modernization, still more tribal type community out in the wild, whatnot, it was very much a survival frequency in all of us. And people who are kind are safer. If we're coming as a company and it's always in the negative and it's always in the bad and it's always in that kind of vibe, at a core level, we're just not as much of an ally. We're not drawn together and more likely to coordinate our efforts. And I think that this is a big part of, a huge part of the theories around this is why marketing and sales, not PR as much, but marketing and sales, always have to keep cranking the wheel to get more and more results, is because they're coming from the place, they're trying to I want to get a flywheel going. You know the flywheel concept of where everything's organic and it supports and takes care of itself? If you've never seen the movie Biggest Little Farm, I highly recommend watching it. It's a phenomenal documentary around creating farming from this flywheel concept. And my kids really love it, so we've watched it like 40 times. But think too about how do we do that in business? How do we create perpetual motion? So I create campaigns and it keeps going. It's not that it's only going if I'm cranking. And when we come from fear and scarcity and uncertainty, we're always having to keep applying force and keep cranking. Whereas if we come from this place, we create more relationship. They're not hitting unsubscribe instantly after they signed up for the deal, right? We have a whole different way of connecting. And I really want to flag you too on family. We work with a lot of companies that are doing really profound work, thinking of like life insurance companies and whatnot. And we're helping this life insurance company that was looking at and auditing their customer communication and the way they speak to people. And it wasn't written by the PR department, most of the customer comms. And there was one letter in particular that is, let's say that someone had passed away and You were the beneficiary of their life insurance money. You didn't necessarily pick that company. They're just the ones you're getting checks from. And the letter that you get that says, this is the last check, or this is the second to the last check. Oh my Lord, the way it was written was so perfunctory, and it made us all feel very sad. And they felt really sad too, but they didn't know what do we do? We're just conveying this fact. How do we say it so they authentically feel good? And I don't remember the exactness of it, but it went into saying, we've been so honored to serve you as a member of our family, despite our sadness for the way that we came to know each other. We want you to know that there's one payment left on this, but regardless of you not receiving information and things from us, you're part of our family forever. And you're always invited to our community events, and you can always take access of all these different things that we have for members because you're part of the family. I get emotional when I talk about that because I know that there are people out there in the world getting those letters, and that they used to get that letter and feel horrible, feel like a door was being shut, of like, here, you got your money, get away from me now. Even though that was never the energetic space they were trying to come from. But now that we're thinking about my audience as my community, my family, and so how would I talk to my family? I wouldn't be like, oh, family, this isn't gonna come anymore. Good luck. We're not gonna speak that way. And we, as communication professionals, our value in our organization of how much influence we have over what other departments do with communication, really our influence expands significantly when we come from these types of places and start showing that type of measurable effect. This is real quick. I don't want to go into all the details, but some of the studies, when they give a family cue to someone about a behavior to take, an action to take, when it had a family cue in it, they were 100% participation as opposed to like 15% participation. It's not a small difference. It's a massive difference when we come at people, not just from you're who my job makes me talk to, but you're who I want to be working with. Do you get that difference? My job makes me talk to you versus we're community and I care. And let me pause for a second and say, if you can't get from that place, then change your job, okay? If you really can't get to a place of seeing other people as your ally, your community, it's only a market to convert, your days are numbered. We are in a world where that type of marketing doesn't have very many years left on it. When I showed you Nudge a minute ago, I meant to tell you too, the FTC, if you Google Amazon, FTC, and Nudge, they just filed a lawsuit against Amazon for the unethical use of Nudge. These things have been around for a long time. And the way that we interact or don't involve ourselves in knowing how we're interacting with them can be career enders. At Amazon, knowing about how Nudge works, what they are doing over there is that they're engineering the process to leave Prime. Say you have a Prime membership and you want to cancel it. They use all the things that we know to help people get to a decision more easily, and they reversed it to make it really freaking hard to get out. So, let's say like one of the things in Nudge would teach of like whatever button you're going to click on that you want for what you want, we highlight it, okay? So I'm signing up. Do you want to finish this? Hit yes, and yes is nice and big and orange. So they make you go through this. They called it the Trojan, I can't remember the name of it, something like Trojan horse or whatnot, or like it was all like this really long battle of how hard it was going to be, the process they internally engineered to get it so that you couldn't cancel Prime. And then still, once you go through it all though, at the very end, which button was highlighted in orange? It was the one of, you don't really want to do this, do you? You made a mistake. You don't mean to be doing this. So the button you think, finally I'm at the end, and I click it and it cancels the whole process and you're back to the beginning again. It is so prevalent. Now that I've flagged this for you, I bet you'll see it everywhere. Spotify, I'm talking to you. You can't cancel your membership from the app. There are so many places you can sign right up in the app. Nice and easy, come on and be part of the family. Oh, you wanna leave? Oh, that's gonna take 2 weeks. You gotta call this department, you gotta send this email, you gotta do all this, then we gotta fight with you. And if you wanna dispute it on your credit card, good luck, because you're gonna have to prove you did all of this. It's not right. Wow. It's not right. And if you start to watch FTC and the things that are happening, they are coming down on communication and design professionals that are entrapping. That's what that is. And it's a norm in our society that we do not want to fall into. We want to be aware of what it's doing. We're not the Semmelweis doctors, we're Semmelweis. We understand hand washing matters, and we're going to do it before it is ingrained in solid stone that it is important for us to do. We can see the effect and participate with them. One of the other ways we can get people really involved in states of unity, I love this one for us as PR pros, as we think campaignistically, what can I do? And it's the concept of co-creation. So when you're doing something, especially in government relations, in community relations, big things, how do I co-create what I'm doing with my audience? So this is an example from the UK. It was a research vessel, cost 960 million pounds, I believe was the price of this, taxpayer money. And it was going to circle and go around the Arctic Circle to do weather pattern type data and things like that. When you spend nearly $1 billion taxpayer dollars, they want to make sure the taxpayers are happy about it, that they like what this ship is going to go do. So very intelligently, they decided, let's create a co-creation campaign to name it. What do we want to name this boat? And it was really successful. People participated huge. But it's a word of caution. Take note, when you do co-creation campaigns, just don't make them a democracy. People really want to participate, but if you make it a democracy, they named it Bodie McBoatface, because it kind of looks like the guy from Cars, right? And it was international everywhere, Bodie McBoatface, because they're funny over there. Here's the top 20 names that came in. I'm a child of the 90s, so I love... Thanks for all the fish. Ice, ice, baby. It's bloody cold here. So they ended up picking number 5. If you watch any of David Attenborough's shows, a lot of them are facilitated by this vessel and things that they see and discover. So do use co-creation, but it's not a democracy, okay? You're in charge, or else it becomes a story in lore of how it got hijacked, which maybe not a bad thing either, depending on what it is. All right, so that was talking about unity. Now, what are the questions we ask ourselves to create and make sure that we've really tuned unity into our language? How could we bring people together more? How could we co-create with them? And then is there more relational language? Make that a category in your Evernote file, in wherever you are, in your bookmarks, to start capturing what you see as relational communication, as things that make you feel more of a relationship with that company. Save those, share them with your team. Look at what people are doing that creates a state of relationship and that I take action because of relationship. And send them to me, by the way. Like, I really want to see all of those things have more examples. All right, so we touched on some of the resonant dynamics. You guys understanding how this works now? And see that if we went into our consideration, you would now learn those little tuning forks, if you will, of how I really tune in all these things so that my message is really what we call resonant. The frequency I send out, it's what I intend, and we're vibing in that same place, okay? Now the next layer I want to give you a little taste of is what we call harmonic dynamics before we get into tuning for distortion. Now usually in comms, we're going to create our macro meta message and macro meta strategy informed from this field. Once this is created and in place, we tune with the knowledge that we're about to learn here. We don't create necessarily as much from here. Sometimes we can create from here, but these are more things that we are going to tune to make sure they aren't present anymore, or that if there is a presence of them, we have tuned it so that it's harmonic, not harm. Do you ever notice that the word harm and harmony are the same there? Because that's the line we're walking. We either cause harm or harmony. There's not really much of a difference. We don't typically ever leave people unimpacted. It may be that their conscious 5% mind doesn't recognize the impact, but they're impacted. Harm or harmony? So let's look at some of this, an example of a harmonic dynamics. Has anyone heard the term semantic stop signs? So there's so many things we are now seeing phonetically, linguistically, that when present in our language, arrest and upset and hurt. A semantic stop sign is something that is unconsciously telling you to shut up. It's stopping you from thinking. I was thinking and now I'm not. So do we want to have that in our comms? There's a lot of people that think we do because they say, I'm not one of them, but they say, I don't want you thinking. If you think about it too much, then you won't pick me. Well, that's a problem, right? If you're in that world, that's why when we talk about the companies we work with, it's mission-driven organizations, not everybody. Because if that's where you're coming from, and a lot of people are, I just gotta jam as many of these widgets into the world as I possibly can. They work in this world. They create communication that gets you to stop thinking more, so you make the purchase, you make the change from a state of fear, from a state of rush, from a state of urgency, as opposed to everything that we've been talking about today. So some of the things that we tune out and we stop using when I talk about semantic stop signs, what might these be? What are the kinds of things that are happening? Because they are known to be, in the literature, mind control techniques. Okay, I was raised fundamental Baptist. And while I am still Baptist, I'm not necessarily fundamental anymore at the extent that my church was as a child. They're not too far away from some of the real fundamentalist extremes that we see. So as I read this material, oh man, the amount of memories that came back up. Like I could never say anything in church anytime I would have a question but I think this, chapter and verse, that was the statement. You're not allowed to have a thought unless you can back it up with the specific chapter and verse of why you're even thinking that kind of thing. There's so many different ways we use them. But one that is really common is what we call thought terminating cliches. That's what that was. You can't say anything to me until you give me chapter and verse. But here's also another. It is what it is. Now let's debate this one for a sec. Can we do this? Can we debate this for a sec? So there are motivating and calming cliches. And then there are thought-terminating cliches. And some cliches can be in both categories. It depends on the energy of where it's coming from. But the majority of these, what they do is say to whatever state you were in before that it's wrong or stop. Like let's say you come in to work in the morning and you're like, my dog died, whatever sad thing happened and I'm just not feeling good. And I'm like, oh man, it is what it is. Get over it, right? Do you feel it? Do you hear it? Like, what a crappy thing that is to say. It's terrible. It's terrible. It is what it is. Who says that to themselves, though, in their head a ton of times a day when facing something that you're not pleased about or that feels like it's hurting you? And we go to these cliches. You're telling yourself to shut up. You're telling yourself, don't even think about it. Don't do that to yourselves anymore. Don't. This is one of the things when I talk about I finally got able to make hard changes in my body and change my physical health because I stopped talking to myself. This is a lot of what we got rid of. And a lot of times we think as leaders and in team comms that this is how we create understanding. My mom is from a world where she thinks that anytime there's confusion or a new idea, we're supposed to blurt out a cliche because that's what creates common ground. A lot of people think that cliches are what we create, how we enjoy a common ground experience because it's this like the known sign, right? And I'm just orienting us around it. That's where a lot of people are coming from. But we know better now, so we do better. We know that the effect is a psychological shutdown of brain function. Brain waves drop. People aren't participating in thinking anymore. They're just in slave mode. And that's not where we are here to come from. That's just one example, and if we learn the remainder of them, you'll learn the language that walks the line to be the difference between manipulation versus education. And in communication, we are here to educate, not manipulate. And there is a very fine line, but the differences are very abundantly clear when you start to really look into this language. We also teach you the difference around evaluative language norms. Has anyone heard of thick versus thin evaluative language? That's one of the things we'll teach you of how you tune your evaluative language to stay in what cognitive linguistics calls the thick realm. And that facilitates communication and relationship as opposed to more thin language. And then microaggressions that are present in comms, how do we tune all of those out, many of which we're just not aware of. Like many of us didn't realize that these cliches have that kind of effect. Now, lastly, let's sit on distortion dynamics real quickly and touch this, and then I can take a few questions if you'd like. So on distortion, has anybody heard the word backfire effect? How there are things that we know we do this and it might backfire. Well, we train on and focus into 6 as to how they relate to communication. Unintended consequences backfire, familiarity, overkill, worldview, extremes, and trust. And there's little nuanced things to know about all of these of how I don't push that button that causes that problem. So I talked to you this morning about the familiarity one, right? And that if I repeat something that is not true, you're more likely to just remember that. We train the organization, there's one in this country that is focused on teaching all the different state level communication professionals who are in charge of rail safety messaging for the United States. It's all organized by one central office. So if you're going to be teaching kids about how to be safer around trains, they're the people that go out and give the train presentations, the rail safety presentations in schools and whatnot. And it felt like a knife to my stomach to see how they're training kids. Because it's all with quizzes of what is the myth. And so they're stating the myth. Trains can slow down real fast, true or false? False, they can't. Here's the reality of it. You know what those kids are gonna remember? The words they saw. The trains can slow down real fast. So it's okay for me to go in front of them. We're all on the same team. We don't want kids getting hurt by trains. We want safer rail safety. They don't know that to state the negative is to make that myth more familiar, and what they're actually doing is totally getting that audience to have a misunderstanding about what they're trying to do. We want to know that we're spreading bacteria, we're spreading harm, rather than spreading understanding and relationship. All right, so before we wrap up, I know we just have a few minutes, I just wanted to leave you with this of if you're enjoying this, you wanna work with us, understand how can we be a resonant communicator. We have 3 different ways kind of to work with us. What we call being a resonant professional, how you yourself have this distinction and differentiation, versus a resonant team, and then resonant kind of creations. We have never had online classes, and we are launching them next month. I am very excited to share that all with you. We have a capacity for 40 students and class registrations opened today. So classes start on the 16th. We have a discount code here for you since you have learned so much around this. I want to try and pass some of that on to you. And you can register at engagementsciencelab.com. But if you do some of this training with us, what I want to make sure you understand is what we'll do is really get into the woods much more deeper around more of these different 7 sequence sense makings and what are the exact formulas that you start workshopping. What is a noise analysis instead of a SWOT analysis? How I get my company there? How do I do goals around perceptions and attitudes and behaviors rather than the way we typically did? And then what are all the communication and harmonic and backfire dynamics? A lot of folks we help in a team capacity because I know I've even had this conversation with some of you here in this room already is right away folks say, I really want to do this in my PR, my outside world, but we don't talk to ourselves this way inside. And I don't know how to talk to myself this way. And so a lot of times we'll come in and do either remote or in-person workshops to help tune organizational and internal communication instead from this more resonant dynamic. Helping a team, if you've got a manager or somebody on your team who's constantly like, it is what it is, or many of the other things that we know, how do we create a safe space to say, stop talking to me that way? Because if you go say, stop talking to me that way, I just heard this lady at a conference and you're telling me to shut up. It's not gonna go over well, okay? Don't do that. That's not really the way to get that message across so that it's harmonic. It's what I'm learning, and I didn't realize I was talking to myself this way and what kind of effect it has. And what kind of quantum effect it has on us as a team, the things that we start thinking about, and what we then create when we're coming from that place. So if you would like to download today's presentation, there you go. No more keeping that back. 7 sequences, but you have to spell out the word 7. Somebody else already owned the number 7 with sequences, but it's not bad if you go look at that too. It's like yoga poses. So maybe it's like, I was curious, like, what do they do? What 7 sequences are they? So go to either one. It's quite valuable. But thank you guys all so much for joining me. And I think we have time for a few questions if there's any that you have before we break.
So when,
Yeah.
that just stops me in my tracks when somebody says, well, it is what it is.
It stops you in your tracks because it's a semantic
I
stop.
don't know what to say. I'm just like, I want to say something, but it felt like I'm so speechless.
You're saying right now, if I can mirror that real quick from this morning about vibes, you felt the vibe that stopped you. And you're saying, I feel that and I don't know what to say. Exactly. Because you've been subconsciously told, don't say anything else. There's nothing more to discuss here. And that's why you feel that way. And that's how we can tune away, because I don't want to make you feel that way. But I'm typically just not even aware. Like my sweet mama, she thinks she's creating common ground. And really she's, total opposite effect. And we want to involve ourselves with our impact. Any other questions? Any more questions? Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. You're so welcome. So welcome, guys.